Hey guys, this is James, and in this video I'm going to show you how to get the X and Y offset values for your bltouch. I'm going to show you how to change your X and Y offset values in the firmware and how to compile it and then upload it to your printer. A lot of people use microcalipers like this to make the measurements and get the X and Y offset value. However, I'm going to be doing it a little bit differently because I think this method is going to be probably more easier. You're probably going to have a ruler as opposed to a microcaliper. Yeah, so let's get those offset measurements. Just use a standard piece of paper. Now, if you're using a mount like the one that I'm showing here, you're not going to have to do this step because I'm going to give you the values of the X and Y offset. However, if you have like a different mount, this is something that you might want to do. Basic regular sheet of paper. I'm just going to tape it down to the bed. If you have a PEX system like I do, you can just mark it on top of the bed, and since it's clear, it'll show up. However, if you're using like a stock bed from Creality, the black is not going to show up on black, and you're not going to be able to mark on the bed itself. So when you tape it down, just make sure it's flat. The paper is flat on the bed without any wrinkles. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to home Now I'm going to raise it up, and I'm going to try to mark the general area of where I think the bltouch landed. I'm just going to put a circle there, and then I'm going to home it again. And then I'm trying to get the fine-tuned position of the bltouch. So to me, it looked like it landed right around here. Hold on, I need this print head to go up a little bit so I have some space. So it looks like to me it landed right about there. And I'm going to home it again to verify. Okay, that's good. I got the position of the bltouch. And now there's more than one way to do this. Again, you can use something like a microcaliper and try to measure the bltouch to the nozzle. However, you have to take out the head. And I'm trying to do it in the most easiest fashion. So again, we got the position of the bltouch. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to go out, go to the temperature, and manually I'm going to increase the temperature to around 200. That's the melting point of the PLA plastic that I have. Now once it gets to around 200, I am going to change this refuel to about 1 millimeter. And then I am going to move it down, and I better change it to 1 millimeter increments. And then I am going to refuel it to 1 millimeter, and then I am going to feed it. And then I'm going to move this all the way to the left. And then I am going to move it down again. And then I am going to go to the refuel. 1. And then I'm going to move it up. And then I am going to go all the way to the right. And then again, I'm going to bring it down. And then I am going to do the refuel 1mm feed, and then I'm going to move the head back up. Oops. This is why I said this is why you should actually tape it down, but that's good. Okay, I know it's a little messy. However, I did get my 3 points, actually 4 points, and I'm just going to remark it. So basically I have my 3 marks from the plastic, the nozzle, and then I'm just going to create a straight line, and you see this point from this end point to the this middle intersecting mark, they should actually line up. If these 2 outer points are in a straight line, but the bisecting point does not line up, that means you took the measurement wrong. So I'm just gonna create a straight line, and this is where the bltouch mark was, right here. I have this tool. You get an angle, and then you can get a straight line out of that angle that you have. And I know that the bltouch actually hit the mark right there, and that's the area that I'm aiming for. I'm trying to keep it in a right angle. So this point right here to this point right here is the X offset of the bltouch to the nozzle. It's at around 25, 26, 27. On the Y value, it's gonna be around the 2. The Y value is about a 1.5, actually 1.5. So those are the offset numbers. These are going to be negative values, negative 27 and negative 1.5. So if you stuck around with me this far, don't forget to push the subscribe button on the bottom right. Also check out some of my other videos on how to install the bltouch and how to find the firmware for the bltouch. I've actually decided to put the older version of the Creality Marlin firmware on my Thingiverse account. I think that's going to be much easier. This is the version that I'm going to be using, because although this GitHub is actually the major source for the new releases and upgrades and fixes, they're constantly upgrading and constantly changing the code. So some of the changes may not apply to the previous version. By the time I'm making this video, they may have updated, and the version that you see or the tutorial that you see is actually going to be different than the actual configuration files that you see on the latest version. That's why I'm going to put the older configurations that work on my Thingiverse account, and then it's going to be for the bltouch right here. This way I won't get like the comments, emails that ask, your firmware looks different than mine or something like that, because again, because from GitHub, they're constantly making updates and changes, so the code may look different than the previous versions. However, if you want to play around, this is where you want to get your latest release. And then just if you download this right here, click on the download zip, and then you can use that. This will not be configured for the Cr10s Pro. It might be configured for a different printer, and you're going to have to go through like many different steps to configure your own files, and then compile it, and then upload the firmware. So I'm giving you the easier method, which is going to be just to take it from my Thingiverse account. That way you know that the configuration files is actually configured for the Cr10s Pro rather than for a different printer. And again, this is from like the Tiny Machines firmware or the Insanity Automation firmware that I've taken it out of. I noticed that this download all files doesn't work, so what you want to do is just go down here, and then you want to go to Thing Files, and then you want to download this for the firmware, and this for the mount. And you want to go ahead and extract this file. Also, while it's extracting, I'm going to go to Arduino IDE. You're going to go here, you're going to go to downloads, and then depending on your operating system, you're going to click on whichever link. I'm using a Windows 10. I'm going to just get the app and then click on just download, and it's going to take you to the Microsoft Store. You're going to click on get, install the app. I already have it installed. And another program that you might want to use is Pronterface. You're going to go to downloads. Don't use this Git repository. If you use Python, you can go ahead and use the Git repository, but if you don't, you're going to have to install Python and then compile this files. You don't want to do that. Just go ahead to the Windows and OS X binaries and then click on whichever operating system that you're going to be using. This is the latest Windows version. I'm just going to download this one. I already have them all extracted already. Once you've extracted the files and you have the Arduino IDE, you can go ahead to the Marlin folder and go ahead and click on the Marlin folder, and then you can click on this Marlin INO, and then it's going to open the Arduino. There you go. And then you're going to go to the configuration H. If you want documentation of what all these things mean, you might want to go to this Marlin website. It's going to give you a lot of the codes and source files. Configuration H contains the core settings for hardware, language, and controller selections, and settings for most common features and components. Configuration Advanced H serves up more detailed customization options, add-ons, experimental features, and Historica. So there's a lot of documentation, and it gives you a lot of the G codes that you may need. You can go ahead and look through all these documentations if you want. However, in the code, there are a lot of comments, and those lines are not processed as part of the code. Those are meant for like human eyeballs to read and see what they mean. This is like when you have a multiple line comment where you have a / and a star in the beginning, and you end the comment by putting a star and a / on the end. And these double / are single line comments. The first thing you want to do is go to the tools, and then you want to select your board, which is the Arduino Mega or Mega 2560. And then you're going to select this right here, AT Mega 2560. And then you can do this port selection once you plug in the printer to the USB cable. And then what you want to do is go to Preferences, and then you want to click on the compilation, and you want to actually display the line numbers. If you don't have this display line numbers displayed, you're going to have no reference numbers. So you want to go to here, Preferences, and click on the display numbers, and also have this compilation turned on. That's going to allow you to see any type of errors that might be happening line by line once you start compilation. As you can see by this the code, there are a lot of different printers that this firmware is going to service, and these are basically like options, you know, like if you have the Ender 3, no, this Ender 3 is right here, but if you have like a Cr10s Pro, as you can see, it's defined. If you comment it out, the code is not going to be run, or I would say it's going to ignore that line of code when it processes. So if you uncomment it, this is like almost like a switch where you turn on this line for the code to be run. And that's just like the basics of it. So you want to turn this uncomment the define Cr10s Pro. Again, that would vary depending on what type of printer you have. And then let me see. You have a hot end stock. Again, this is defined. If you have a newer updated firmware and people start adding code, these line numbers are going to really change. So I can't really tell you it's going to be line number 44, because as you can see from here, it has up to line number 3094. Let me just give you an example. If someone was to put another machine or use another machine, and then you see the line numbers will change. So what's good to do is actually use this, select this, and then just do a Control and F. You might want to use the actual text and find feature to find whatever you need to find. If you have any of the other hot ends, you can go ahead and uncomment the stock hot end and then define the, like the mosquito. However, I'm going to put the hot end stock, define that one. I did notice that when I downloaded the firmware from GitHub previously, that this was defined, the hot end all metal. I always say this is like kind of like a safety feature, that unless you actually really do have an all metal hot end, you should not enable it. This limits the temperature to 245. The safe temperature for a PTFE tube is generally around like 250 degrees Celsius. If you have temperatures higher than that, there's going to be off-gassing. It's really poisonous to animals and human beings, so that's why you don't want to get it above that temperature unless you actually have a all-metal hot end. So if you do have an all-metal hot end, you can enable this feature, which again, here is the comment where it gives you the description of what it does. Remove the comments and define it or enable the hot end. And then basically you're going to go ahead and scroll down. This number 7, line 70, define bed DC. That's good. And then again, line number 80, where it's auto bed leveling bltouch. I've already uncommented the selection. It's enabled. And what else? You can uncomment this also, which is auto bed level bilinear. It really doesn't matter. If you read here, it says by default it's bilinear. So if they're both commented out, it's going to automatically be defaulted to the bilinear. Again, all the documentation is up right here, and you can read it. Here's a comment for plain language for you and I to read, and if you want to disable it, enable it, depending on the hardware that you have, any type of upgrades that you may have. And then, so the important parts are probably this one right here. Anywhere this is mentioned, your printer is mentioned, you want to go here. Oh, not that one. I'm just going to copy this right here. Fine. I'm just giving you an example of what you can do, what you should be doing. Again, you should really go through all of it, but based on your printer, a lot of things are going to be enabled or disabled. For the Cr10s Pro, the nozzle to probe offset is -27 by -2, and this was originally 0. I've already plugged in the numbers. As you remember, we took the measurement and then it was -27 and -2 for the Y value. And here is the comment, or here is the description, and it gives you a little diagram. The right is positive, the back is positive, left is negative, the front is negative. So wherever your nozzle is, the offset that you have, again, you want to just plug in the numbers. You have your machine right here, the Cr10s Pro with the hot end stock. To click on what options you have, what upgrades you have, and then just enable and disable the features. When you're done, you can go ahead and compile it. As you can see, it's detecting the libraries, and then it's going to start compiling. You're not going to see this if you have on your preferences this output unchecked. If you have that unchecked, you're not going to see it, so you want to have this checked. And then, as you can see, there is already an error while detecting included libraries. So if these are the errors that you have, error while detecting libraries included by, and then it gives you the directory. If you have this type of error, you can just ignore it. This has to do with caching. I'm going to compile it one more time, and this time it's going to be a lot faster. As you can see, all the libraries that is not being detected is actually disappeared. So that has to do with the caching. So if you have that type of error, just go ahead and ignore it, and then just go ahead and recompile. And go ahead and connect your printer. You don't have to turn on your printer to upload the firmware. Just make sure you connect your printer to your computer using the USB cable. And then there's going to be enough power for it to upload it to your board. What you want to do is also make sure that you select your port and make sure this is a port for your printer. So at this time you can go ahead and select it. Mine is COM5. So if I already selected it, and then you're going to use this arrow button to upload your firmware. And again, this is going to take quite a bit of time. You have basically your status right here where it says you're uploading, and then you have your status bar right here. And once you're done, you're going to hear that little jingle from the printer. Well, also, if you want to find your here you go. This is your actual hex file. If you want to find it, you can just go ahead and do the control copy, and then you want to run it. Use the run command and use the temp. Use this command to open, and then you want to go ahead and paste the file name, and then you want to go ahead and open the file location, and that's where your hex is going to be. So basically you're done. You may want to turn on your printer and check everything out. I'm not going to do that. Well, actually I am going to do that, but let me go to the print run. I extracted this. This is the printer face. Let me go ahead and turn on my printer. What I mean is, if you're using a USB cable, the printer face is pretty good. If you're using like a Wi-Fi, Octoprint is pretty good. You can basically get the status of your printer. As you can see, when you scroll to the top, you can verify that everything was actually uploaded to the printer correctly. It says the last update was 2019 27, but it said it was compiled April 17, 2020. And that's actually how you compile the firmware for your printer. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave it in the comments below. And as I said before, the options and hardware and upgrades are going to be slightly different for your printer. So you're probably going to have to use different settings. Or the configuration files that are saved on the ones that I'm going to upload to Thingiverse is going to be for the Cr10s Pro, the version 1, with the bltouch. I also have all metal hot end, but however, as I said before, I disabled that feature because it's a safety feature, and if you do have an all metal hot end, you guys should uncomment the line and enable it yourself. I think that will be better. If you did like this video, go ahead and leave a like. Also, if you can, share this video and go ahead and leave a comment, like, and subscribe to my channel. Thanks.